Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 104. And today's title of the episode is "The Economic Collapse is Starting to Heat Up." And we're seeing this all around the world, and we're seeing a lot of things going on. And today we see the market, the Asian market is down, the European and U.S. markets are up. Gold is rising again. It's up by $22 or so, and the market inched up by 89 points. It's above 15,000 points right now. But when we stop looking at the stock market and we look around the world and we see what is really going on, it paints a completely different picture. And for instance, if we go out to Italy, Greece, Portugal, yes, they will probably get bailed out with more money that is loaned to them, but every single time this happens, it results in the same problem. They can't repay the money they received, so they need more of it, and it continually puts them in this cycle that they will never get out of until the time comes where they just can't borrow anymore. I mean, it's a very simple thing. If you take a person and they're living their lives and they're making $20,000, let's say they're making $50,000 and they have $150,000 worth of debt, of credit card debt, and they continually take out a credit card to cover the interest payments on that debt, sooner or later you can't take out any more because the amount of money that you're bringing in just doesn't cover it anymore, and the party ends. Basically, that's what we're going to see. We're definitely going to see the party end. So here are some 11 signs that Italy is descending into a full-blown economic depression. The unemployment rate in Italy has risen to 12.2%. This is the highest in 35 years. The youth employment rate is around 38.5%. And number 3, an average of 134 retail outlets are shutting down in Italy every single day. Number 4, Italy's economy has now been contracting for 7 quarters in a row. Number 5, it is being projected that Italy's GDP will shrink by 1.8%. Number 6, industrial production in Italy has declined for 15 months in a row. Number 7, overall factory output in Italy has fallen by about 1/4. Number 8, in May, automobile sales in Italy were down 8%. Number 9, the number of people that are considered to be seriously deprived in Italy has doubled over the past 2 years. Number 10, Italy now has a debt to GDP ratio of 130%. Number 11, it is being projected that Italy will need a major EU bailout within 6 months. So basically, yes, they can continually bail out all these people, and eventually they'll get back, for a little while that everything's fine, and then all of a sudden the same thing will happen, just like in Greece. Bailout 1, bailout 2, and then we used up all that money. We can't make the interest payments. We can't do anything. We need another bailout, and we will see this over and over and over until the country completely says, and everyone else says, we can't loan you any more money. We're done here. And basically, in China, the U.S. and Europe have always suppressed the rising price of gold, and this was on the China radio. And the China Radio International sponsored newspaper World News Journal, according to China's National Foreign Exchange Administration, China's gold reserves have recently increased, and China has been buying gold like crazy. The price of gold gets smacked down. They come in, they purchase. Russia is doing the same exact thing. And basically, the majority of its gold reserves have been located in the U.S. and European countries. The U.S. and Europe have always suppressed the rising price of gold. They intend to weaken gold's function as an international reserve currency. They don't want to see other countries turning to gold reserves instead of the U.S. dollar or euro. And basically, in was it like 2 episodes or 1 episode ago, we're seeing that the Bundesbank is saying that China is going to become the next world reserve currency. They have a huge gold reserve. Russia has huge gold reserves, and basically the England, U.S., and the Western nations deal mostly in fiat, and they do not have huge gold reserves. They are trying to catch up now with the central bankers buying up the gold as they smack down the price of gold. They just gobble it up, just like all of us should be doing. Instead of selling it, we should be, basically saying, you know what, this stuff is on sale and we need to buy it. Now, Japan, the Japanese people are also purchasing gold right now. In Japan, gold bullion demand in 2013 is twice the level seen in 2012. And I like the way this article puts it, that gold is your insurance policy. And you have to think of it this way. Think how much money you throw out on automobile insurance, homeowners insurance, if you have life insurance. You spend a couple $100s a month on insurance, which you never get back. It disappears into the ether for this ridiculous protection that might not happen to you. And over the course of your life, you will spend oodles amount of money on this insurance. Think of gold and silver as your insurance policy on fiat currency. So basically, if you're spending, I'm just going to make up a number here, $200 a month on auto insurance, which you never see again, it's just gone, you are spending $2,400 a year, and it's basically taking money and throwing it out the window because they're saying they're going to protect you, if you get into a car accident. Gold, silver, palladium, any type of the precious metals, you purchase the precious metals. That is your insurance policy against the collapse of fiat currency. But the best thing about it, this insurance policy continually goes up in value. And you hold on to it. It's yours. You get to keep it. If you look at a graph from, just say from the 1900s to now, yes, gold and silver, they dip down, but the trend has always been up. It has never gone down, 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 down. Yes, it might have dipped for a year or so or 2 years, but then the trend always goes up and makes up the difference. So I like the way they put this. It is an insurance policy, and we have been conditioned to buy other insurance, and we have no problem spending the money. But when it comes to gold and silver, people always are cautious and like, oh, I don't want to do that. But you have no problem throwing money out the window for automobile insurance or for homeowners or for life insurance or for health insurance, whatever you're spending it on. Okay, let's move on here. Now, last week we got the jobs report, and the news was going around saying how great the job market is. The stock market, is going up because of this great news. And this is 15 signs that the quality of jobs in America is going downhill. I'm not going to read all 15. I picked out some of the ones that I thought were really good and highlighted what is really going on in the country. And number 2. In America today, only 47% of adults have a full-time job. Number 3, even though the U.S. economy created nearly 200,000 jobs in June, the number of full-time jobs actually decreased. And we've seen this where the jobs are decreasing and they're basically flipping over now into part-time jobs, because as people lose their jobs, their high-paying full-time jobs, it is very difficult to get that same type of job again. Now, I've had friends who lost their job here, and they tried for a couple of months to get the same type of paying job, but they couldn't. They had to move away into another part of the country to get that same exact job. They didn't make any more money. They're just staying even. They had to sell their house. Some people had to sell at a loss. Some people broke even, and some people made a little bit depending on when they purchased the home. Okay. 1 out of every 10 jobs in the United States is now filled through a temp agency. Now that makes sense to me because as more of these full-time jobs are being replaced by temp, by people getting 1 or 2 or 3 temp jobs to make up the difference, they're going through temp agencies to get work. According to one recent survey, 76% of all Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. Again, if you went from a full-time job and now that job you no longer have and you're making less and food is going up, fuel is going up, insurance is definitely going up. I don't know any of you, but auto insurance is going up quite a bit. I notice every single time my policy comes up, there's always an increase. All right, let's move on here. High-paying manufacturing jobs continue to be shipped overseas. Sadly, there are fewer Americans employed in manufacturing now, more than there was in 1950, even though the population of the country has more than doubled since then. Well, basically, all the manufacturing jobs have been moved off into other countries. In the United States, we have very few manufacturing jobs, and most of the companies have moved off into different countries because the labor is cheaper, taxes are cheaper, everything is cheaper over there. At this point, an astounding 53% of all American workers make less than $30,000 a year. And making less than $30,000 a year is, depending on what area you live in, and if you live in a specific area where it's very expensive, $30,000 a year, especially if you have a family of 4, you are struggling to get by. Only 24.6% of all jobs in the United States qualify as good jobs. Basically, since all the full-time jobs are rolling over into part-time jobs because a lot of people are getting more than one job just to make ends meet, we can see that the quality of jobs, and especially from the jobs report, because more people are moving into hospitality, bartending, food service type of work, we have no manufacturing. We have basically all service-oriented types of positions. Now, talking about jobs and unemployment benefits are being cut big time by the sequester. And I noticed that they always seem to use the sequester on the people just to remind them of what's going on. Now, again, President Obama can go off to Africa, spend $100 million. He can get a brand new limousine, bulletproof limousine, for a couple $1,000,000. They can go on vacation for millions of dollars. We can send weapons over to Syria for millions of dollars. We can help with bailouts in other countries and send aid to Egypt of billions and billions of dollars. But here in the States, the sequester, especially to the people, they got to make sure that you see this, so they always do it with like the fireworks on all the bases. Oh, all the armed forces people can't have fireworks, but they keep all the golf courses open, that all the high-ranking officers and all those people use. And basically, with the sequester, the unemployment benefits took a sizable hit when the sequester federal spending kicked in on July 1st. Starting in July, the average weekly benefit of $289 will fall by $43 a week, which is a good chunk out of weekly income, especially during a time when jobs are still scarce and the labor market has yet to show us signs of the strong recovery needed to fix the unemployment problems in this country. And not only that, especially with food and fuel and insurance and everything just rising, it is getting very difficult to live. Okay. Now, this I thought was a very interesting. Banks are pushing to repeal credit union federal tax exemptions. And the way I see this is that the banks, the Fed, the government, they're all looking for ways to create new taxes and to get more money into the government to cover the shortfall of all these jobs that are being lost and the tax revenue coming in to pay the interest on the the national debt. And basically, credit unions are exempt from paying tax, and basically the exemption costs about 1.6 billion per year, and the major banks are very upset about this, and the government is probably looking at this going, oh, this is a whole brand new tax revenue that we can bring in. Plus, banks are losing their, I'm not even going to call them depositors anymore. I'm going to call them creditors. They're losing their creditors to credit unions because people are fed up with the major banks, and the banks are losing money, and they don't want to lose money. They want people coming back and depositing their money into the banks. And this is why I see that they're making a big stink. Because especially when the bail-ins hit, guess what? If more depositors or creditors they have, the more they can take from you. Now, it looks like Israel attacked Syria weapon depot containing advanced Russian arms. A massive explosion last Thursday at a major Syrian weapon depot in Latakia, not far from the main port of Tartus, was completely destroyed, and it was a munition depot. And a confidential Israeli source informs that the Israeli forces attacked the site. The target were components of Russia's SA-300 anti-aircraft missile system, which had been shipped from Russia to Tartus and stored there. And basically, this was for Syria to shoot down any type of airplane that was flying only in their airspace. And basically, this is Israel's third attack inside Syria since January. And we know the Syrian forces are not Syrian. Most of them are paid mercenaries from the United States government. Basically, Russia knows what's coming. They know the government, the U.S. government, the central banks are trying to get into Syria and overthrow Assad so they can take the U.S. reserve currency and put it into place and establish a central bank, which, once they get into Syria, will lead them into Iran, because Iran has a pact with Syria, and it's a direct line to invade Iran at this point, because Iran's going to come to Syria's rescue. But there is a problem. Russia and China are backing Syria and Iran. And basically, Putin knows what's going on, and he's urging the Syrian opposition leadership to participate in peace talks. But I'm going to tell you right now, all this peace crap that the U.S. government talks about, they send Kerry over there. Before it was Hillary Clinton they sent over there. And peace is the furthest thing from their minds. Their main focus is to overthrow the government in Syria, period. Putin knows this. Russia knows this. They set up strategic missiles in Albania. They're modernizing the base in Albania. They have Navy ships already set. The United States also has ships. The United States has also shipped weapons to Jordan. It was supposed to be as for a drill that they were having, and they left them there. So everyone is taking sides. Everyone is getting ready for this World War III. And Russia right now is saying, hey, let's calm down, everyone. We know what's going on here. Let's talk about this. And basically, the Syrian opposition is sticking to their demands. They want weapons, and basically they don't have time for peace right now. And basically, one of the rebel Syrian leaders, said, "I will not rest until I procure the advanced weapons needed to hit back at Assad and his allies. I give myself 1 month to achieve what I am intent on doing." And basically, they don't care about peace. Their whole goal is to overthrow the government, backed by the United States government. That is their intention. That is what they're doing. Now, also, Putin says Egypt now is moving towards a civil war. And basically, the Russian president is warning that he sees this coming. And I can see why he's saying this, because basically Morsi was backed by the United States government. He was paid in aid billions of dollars to Egypt to keep the reserve currency in check, to keep the central bank in check, and basically he kind of screwed up. He backed the rebels in Syria. The people, didn't like this. The people rose up and they said, we don't want Morsi there anymore. We want him ousted, and we want our own leader that has no ties, that receives no aid, that is not paid off by the U.S. government. And basically, it looks like the U.S. government, is creating havoc in this region because they are very nervous, because they need to make sure that the next person in power they can control, because they do not want the reserve currency of that country to basically be removed, and they want the central bank to be kept there. And the people don't want America involved, or the Obama administration involved at all. And basically, the U.S. government cannot let this happen, and this is why we might see the exact duplicate of what's happening in Syria. We will see paid mercenaries fighting against whatever government or is there, saying that they want to overthrow. But you can see how this is going to turn out. The same thing's happening in Syria right now. These are not true civil wars. These are not true, battles going on. It's all about keeping the status quo of the reserve currency and the central banks. Now, I thought it was interesting that Kokesh was in Washington, D.C., and he brought a shotgun with him, and he loaded it 4 times on a video, and basically, right in the middle of the street, no one even knew he had it. Guns aren't, loaded weapons are not allowed in D.C., and you can see, and we've always said this, the laws are only in place for the law-abiding citizens. Those who do not follow the laws, all of these laws are useless. Just like we have laws that say you're not allowed to murder, but people still murder. We have laws that say you're not allowed to rob or steal, but people still do it. If you're a law-abiding citizen, you will follow these laws. If you're not, these laws are meaningless. So when they say these laws are helping, they are not. These gun control laws do not help. Chicago, which is a gun-free zone, is having more murders and more gun violence than ever. Now, in Nevada, cops are sued over forced occupation of private homes. We're seeing now the Third Amendment basically violated. We saw the First Amendment violated with controlling the press and the people, stopping the people from protesting and talking freely and about their disagreements with the government. We saw censorship with the military, not allowing the troops to read The Guardian. The Second Amendment is continually being violated by passing gun laws which are infringing on the right to have guns, because infringe means not to limit, not to encroach, not to undermine, and basically all these gun laws are infringing on the Second Amendment. The Third Amendment now, Nevada cops are basically going into people's homes without their permission. And according to a legal filing first obtained by the Courthouse News Service, a handful of Henderson Police Department officers and the city itself are being sued for an array of charges, including Third Amendment violation over an incident that mirrors the making of the American Revolution. Attorney for the plaintiffs say police officers demanded they be allowed to occupy two homes owned by their clients on the city's um, Evening Side Avenue in 2011 in order to conduct an investigation involving a neighborhood residence. And basically, the Third Amendment is about quartering and allowing British troops to occupy your home without your permission. The same thing is happening today. And again, like I said, the more rights they take away, the more taxes, the collapse is getting closer and closer. Now, let's move on here. The NSA is spying on the BRIC nations. Now, why would they want to spy on the BRIC nations? Now, the BRIC nations are made up of China, Russia, Brazil, India, and so forth. And basically, the central bankers and the U.S. government know that the fiat money, the U.S. dollar, has a short term to survive, and it's going to collapse very soon. And they know the BRIC nation is working on creating their own rating agency, which will compete against S&P and Moody's, and they are working on their own World Bank. And again, the Bundesbank has referred to China as being the next reserve currency. China has been buying gold hand over fist. They've been stockpiling it, and they are ready to become the reserve currency. And basically, the central bankers, U.S. government, wants to know what they're doing. And basically, not just the United States, but the entire world now is being spied on by the U.S. government and by England and by France. And here's a little something, everything you wanted to know about spying, but were afraid to ask. Okay. The government is spying on virtually everything we do. The government's mass spying doesn't keep us safe. NSA spying didn't prevent a terror attack on Wall Street. There is no meaningful oversight of the spying programs by either Congress or the courts. We can keep everyone safe without violating the Constitution more cheaply and efficiently than the current system. The top counterterrorism czar under Clinton and Bush says the revealing NSA spying programs does not harm national security. Whistleblowers on illegal spying have no legal way to get the information out. Some people make a lot of money off of mass spying, and again, spying could lead to people hearing financial information, insider trading, new patent things coming up, and they're filing the patents before the people. So, you know, and let's see, mass spying creates an easy mark for hackers. Polls show that the public doesn't believe the NSA. And I'll skip down here. Top constitutional experts say the Obama is worse than Nixon and the Stasi of East Germany. And you have to go back to what our founding fathers have said. And if we're looking at what they said, Thomas Jefferson basically said, you know, I predict future happiness for Americans if they can prevent the government from wasting the labors of the people on the pretense of taking care of them. And he goes on to say, they must stop trading liberty for security. They must stop thinking the role of the government is to be involved in all aspects of their lives. They must take a good look of what the proper role of government is. They must understand that as government expands, liberty contracts. The government is best which governs least. And what's funny is the government always uses the case that they're not violating the Constitution at all. We're doing it because of terrorism, and basically you can see this with Homeland Security, and you know they're doing suspicionless searches of laptops and cell phones. Basically, the United States government doesn't need a reason to seize and search the cell phones, laptops, and other electronic devices of Americans entering the country, according to a Department of Homeland Security document provided to the press this week. Basically, we conclude that the CBPs and the ICEs current border search policies comply with the Fourth Amendment. Now, when I read this, I go, it does. Let me read the Fourth Amendment here. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. So they need a probable cause, they need a warrant by oath or affirmation, and it has to describe the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. And let's see if they abide by this. And it's funny, we also conclude that imposing a requirement that officers have reasonable suspicion in order to conduct a border search of electronic devices would be operational harmful if they didn't do it. And they go on to say the government's reasoning, according to the document, is that the blanketing ability to collect and assess the devices of anyone thought to be entering the country is crucial to thwart high crimes. That being said, the government attests that requiring actual probable cause before seizing a device would, in the eyes of the DHS, hinder their ability to counter terrorism. So basically what they're saying is, yeah, we're violating your Fourth Amendment. What are you going to do about it? Because they are. They're giving you a bunch of bullshit jargon, and it says completely and plainly, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. I don't know how people don't see this, and our constitutional lawyers don't see this, and they say it's okay. The only way they're saying it's okay because they're getting paid under the table. This completely violates the Fourth Amendment. We're seeing the erosion of all the rights. And again, the last right they need to take away is the guns. That is their big one. They basically are able to spy on us, to search us, to occupy our homes. They applied all these laws that limit guns, which is not allowed, which is null and void, especially with the court case of Supreme Court case of Mulberry versus Madison, which states any law that is repugnant to the Constitution is null and void. Basically, they are eroding all the rights. Now, the gun bill, the UN Arms Treaty, and CISPA, and soon to be no, that's it. I'm sorry. Are all pending in the Senate right now, and believe me, they want these babies passed. They want them passed, but they're waiting for a special event to happen. And the gun bill, some type of horrific shooting. CISPA, some type of cyber attack. And the other event, the big one, well, kind of like big to large to big, or however you want to say it, is the one to get us into war with Syria. If all these fail, they have the main event of what's called the cyber attack. And the cyber attack, basically, if they can't get the guns, they can't get CISPA passed, and they can't get this war started with Syria, they're going for the biggie. And that is the cyber attack. And we see, and they've been working on this for a year and a half. They continually build this up. In 2003, we had a Northeast blackout, and believe me, that was a test to see if they can bring the systems down and black out a certain section of the United States. And they were able to do it. Ever since about a year and a half ago, they've only been talking about cyber attacks and how the power grid is vulnerable, the major infrastructure is vulnerable, the ports are vulnerable, banks are vulnerable, everything is vulnerable. And there are reports that went on to say, and I discussed this in my previous episodes, that if it does hit and it knocks out generators, transformers, it will take weeks to get the power up and running again. Can you imagine the power being out for weeks at a time? If you are not prepared with food, water, batteries, toiletries, a way to remove your waste, um, water, if I didn't say that already, um, or other things, fuel for your generator, or if you have a solar generator, you need these things because this will be the main attack. They will also, if the bail-ins don't work, if all this other stuff, they will siphon money out of the banks. It's going to be their last-ditch effort. They will steal your money and they will blame it on another country. To get the war started, all of this, they will say, is happening from China or Russia or Syria. Right now, they're making the case for China. Why China? Because they're going to be the reserve currency of the world, and basically they don't like this, the central bankers. So when the lights turn on, or just half the country or a quarter of the country goes out, people are going to be so angry and pissed off that they are going to beg for war because of what they did, and they will blame the entire collapse on the country who did this. And we can see this from additional articles, and this is not just going to happen in the United States. This is going to happen around the world because they need everyone all in to the World War III, cover the economic collapse war, basically. And we see they're rehashing that the cyber attack threat to London Olympic ceremony, and they went on to say that they did get reports that something could happen. There was a suggestion that there was a credible attack on the electricity infrastructure supporting the games. And they're bringing this and hashing this back up because they're starting to build the propaganda now in the UK. And there was another article that says the British defense giant blames Chinese hackers for wave of cyber attacks. And you can see this, the US, Australia, UK now, and the European nations are blaming China for these cyber attacks. And basically this article goes on to say 339 of attacks in nearly one day were classified as sophisticated attacks. And they're saying the only country and the only group that can bring down the infrastructure, which consists of the power grid, water, nuclear, banks, are sophisticated countries that have the ability. And one such a sophisticated country is China, of course. Now, we all need to be prepared, and they're going to try with false flags before they use the main event. And we have to remember that there is a New York City chemical drill coming up in July. They're going to have this in 3 days. We don't know exactly which 3 days they're going to be, but they are going to do this. We also have a cyber attack simulation coming up on July 18th, which is a Thursday. The Zimmerman trial, it looks like they're continually pushing the race riot card, and they might try to get race riots going all across the country to declare some type of martial law. We also have biological weapon drills coming up all throughout the summer. If you'd like to see any of these potential false flags, they are on the homepage of the x22report.com site on the right-hand side. It says, warning, potential false flags. You'll see it on the sidebar. Just scroll down and you will see it. Now, I found another interesting article, and I discussed this over before on my other episodes, and basically this goes on to say, think your money is safe in an insured bank account. Think again. And we talked about the bail-ins. There was an FDIC Bank in England document that stated that depositors are now creditors. The terms of service of banks have now changed, saying that you cannot hold officers, representatives of the banks responsible for money that is lost due to cyber attacks, riots, war, bail-ins, blah, 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 and it goes on and on and on, just like in Cyprus. And the European nation, Canada, I think Australia has also been now looking at the bail-in, and they do have laws on the books that will go into effect. The United States and the Bank of England have their document that they created in 2012, and I have that in the document section if you go to resources, documents. I'm still working on that. I haven't gotten back to it, but I will be updating that with more documents and putting explanations for all the documents, and I will get to that. Now, if we look at why your money will probably not be safe, let's just look at Cyprus. They told us that capital controls will be in effect for 2 weeks, and they said one more week. Now we're over 100 days. They took the top part of their money, a certain percentage, and they took that money away. Then the second part of the percentage of their account, they traded it in for crappy bank stock, which the bank is defaulting, so you got defaulting bank stock, which makes sense. And then we had the rest of the money frozen, where you're not allowed to touch it. You're only allowed to take out a certain amount of money each day. Now, in many of the countries in Europe, in the UK, and in America, we do have insurance for money that is deposited for under, here in the States, it's $250,000. The only problem is that the insurance is good for money. If we have like one bank or two banks fail, what happens if we have a collapse of all the major banks? There's only roughly around $4 billion in the fund of FDIC, and there's about $6.5 trillion of insured deposits. What this means is, for every 10,000 in deposits, it's protected by only $6 in reserves. And further, the FDIC's fund could borrow from the Treasury, but the Dodd-Frank Act now bans taxpayer bailouts of most speculative derivatives activities, and these would be likely triggered of a 2008 style collapse. So basically, your money in the bank, even though it says insured, there won't even be enough to cover this, and there are other problems with covering this type of money. And we've said this, and I've said this before, and many other people have said this before. If you haven't started taking money out of the bank, I would start doing so, because you don't want to wake up the next morning like the people in Cyprus. And I hate to say this, but most of the people in Cyprus who had businesses have lost their businesses, who are now living on the streets, or saved all of their lives, and their money is just frozen in these banks, and they can't get to it. The reason why they kept capital controls in effect is because they don't want bank runs. The news, the mainstream media, if you notice, kind of, just forgot about it. They're just telling everyone Cyprus is good to go and everything's okay. But we know for a fact it is not. People still have their money frozen. So for those people who haven't taken their money out, I personally would, and this is my opinion, I would do it just to be safe. Now, I just wanted to go back for a second for those people, but I've been getting questions about how can I protect myself with the spying and things like that. I can tell you what I do. I use two different browsers. I don't use Internet Explorer. I either use Firefox or I use Chrome. And I use extensions or add-ons that you can add on through the settings function of the browser. And it allows you to install a proxy server, which will allow you to surf the web from another location so it's not your location. So basically what happens is when you install this proxy server, it might show you that you're browsing the web from Africa or from another state in the US or from Mexico. If you don't want to use that, you can also use Start Page, which is startpage.com. That will mask your searches. Basically what happens with that, it goes out to Google, but it does it through its own proxy servers, so it doesn't know where the searches are coming from. And even if you click over to the site, you can use it in stealth mode through a proxy server, so it doesn't even show you going to that site. So there's two different methods that you can use. Some of the better proxies you might have to purchase, but there are free ones out there, and you can use them with the proxy service. Listen, everyone, I want to thank you very much. Tongue-tied right there. Thank you very much for listening. Everyone, be well, be safe, and especially be prepared for what's coming. Thanks a lot.